The light is gonna be real wonky in this video thanks to the stupid clouds outside. Hey guys, it's Ashley, and in today's video I'm going to be talking about my bookish bucket list. So we all know what a bucket list is. It's a list of things you make, of things you want to do before you die. Today I'm going to be talking about the bookish things that I want to do and the books I want to read before I die. This is actually going to be part one of a two-part series that I'm going to have on my channel. This first part is my bookish bucket list. The second part is going to be my travel bucket list. So this video, the first part in this series, is a paid promotion by Disney Book Group in celebration of the release of The Last Life of Prince Alistair by Alexandra Bracken, which is the second book in the Dreadful Tale of Prosper Redding series. You all know how much I loved The Dreadful Tale of Prosper Redding when I read it last year, or maybe the year before. I can't even remember at this point, but I am so excited to dive into this book. You have no idea. Like, the ending of this book left off on such a cliffhanger that I am like literally dying to get to this one. So if you guys don't know anything about this series, let me give you a little bit of detail because it's so funny and also so slightly creepy that it's the best combination ever. So this is a middle grade book. So we follow this kid named Prosper Redding, who is the only unextraordinary person in his prosperous family. Turns out a long time ago, one of his great something grandfathers made a deal with a malefactor or a demon and then broke that contract, and now Alistair, the demon, has come to collect by possessing Prosper. This book is a wild ride, and I don't want to get too far into detail about this book because I don't want to spoil anything that happens in the first one, but we do go to the underworld or the hell type of place that Alistair comes from in this one, and I'm so excited to see how Alexandra Bracken describes it and what it's like, and I'm just ready to see Prosper in that world. So The Last Life of Prince Alistair came out on February 5th, which means it is in stores currently, so you can go and pick up your copy if you have already read the first one, or go get your hands on the first one so you can make it to this one, because you will not regret getting into this hilarious but also creepy but also dark story about this like 12-year-old kid who's possessed by a demon. You gotta read it. It's so good. So thank you once again to Disney for sponsoring this video. I will have links in the description down below where you can get yourself a copy of the first or the second book if you are interested. So you can kind of think of this video that I'm gonna be getting into as the last life of Ashley Knuckles, as in these are the things that I want to do before I die. It's kind of like my will if I were to die, but like I'm not giving anything away. I'm just wanting to do all of the things myself. So on to the bucket list. The first is one of those self-explanatory things. I would love to reread all of my favorite series, Percy Jackson, The Mortal Instruments, Darker Shade of Magic, all of those things at least once every few years so I could just relive that magic of loving them when I first read them. Now, I'm one of those people who I love rereading books, but sometimes if I know what's gonna happen at the end, I just have no motivation to finish it, and it just becomes this huge problem, as it did when I tried to reread A Darker Shade of Magic. But I found out that I recommend these books so often to people, and when I'm talking to somebody in person who is in the middle of reading these books and they're telling me all about them and they're telling me how much they love them, it makes me want to reread them that much more. I recently got one of my coworkers into A Darker Shade of Magic, and she's in the middle of book 2 and she's absolutely loving it, and so we always have conversations about it, and it makes me want to reread the book so badly so that I remember all of the details and I'm able to talk to her about it more. I guess I'm just gonna have to start recommending my favorite series more often, as if I don't already enough, so that I just can relive that magic and be more motivated to continue to read those stories. But one of the things that I do want to do this year is reread Percy Jackson. If not the whole thing, just like the first 5 books, not the Heroes of Olympus yet, maybe. I don't know. I've actually already reread those now that I think about it. So I think it's time for a reread of Percy Jackson. Number 2 is one that kind of a little bit goes along with that one, but also not really. It's meeting Rick Riordan. Now, this doesn't seem so much like a bookish bucket list item, but I mean, he is an author, and he's an author of one of my favorite series, and I do promotional work for his published books and his imprint published books all the time, so I think that this belongs here. I really just want to meet Rick Riordan, and I just want to have a conversation with him and just let him know how much his work means to me. I had the opportunity to last BookCon, and I totally messed that up. Long story short, we were supposed to line up real early for the wristbands, and we got there and didn't even know what time they were being handed out. So we got there and the woman at the booth still had a ton of wristbands, but refused to give them out and told us that the line was closed. So, that was a fun time. So bucket list item number 3. Now this bucket list item might seem a little cliche, okay? But you gotta let me explain a little bit. Number 3 on my bookish bucket list is to read classic books. I feel like we all want to reread the classic books before we die, or at least read them once in my case. We want to know what makes them classics and why they've stood the test of time, and so it's just something that we all want to do. But I actually want to take it a step further, and I have wanted to take it a step further for as long as I can remember now. I want to read the classic books, but then I want to make remix videos basically explaining the synopsis in a really sarcastic, funny manner, and then going into analysis with them as well. I want to kind of make my own funny SparkNotes version of the history of Japan, but with a classic book. I've had this idea to do this forever now, and I've just yet to have the motivation to pick up a classic book to make that video. But if you know the video of the history of Japan, and you know SparkNotes, I really hope that somebody will have some use for that when it comes to classic books when they're studying English in the future. I know looking back on high school and college, I definitely could have used that. So bucket list item number 4 is one that I didn't think was gonna be on this bucket list, but the more that I thought about it, the more I realized that this would be something really, really cool to accomplish before I die, and that is to read a book in a different language. Preferably for me, I would like that to be Spanish, since that's the language that I know most of at this point. I think that reading a book that is translated from a different language, so originally was written in Spanish but translated to English, is cool in and of itself because you are kind of getting a different version of that book. You know, no translation is going to be exact. There are things in other languages that you can't really say in ours and vice versa. But to read a book in an entirely different language is something completely different. You know, reading a book about Spanish culture and then reading a book in Spanish is a completely different immersive type of way to get into that book. So that's definitely something that's on my bucket list. But reading a book in another language, I think, is an accomplishment, not only to, like I said, immerse yourself in that culture, but also to prove that, like, yeah, I know another language. I've studied this stuff so much that I can understand what this person is saying in this language when they're writing it all down, if that makes sense. It's kind of an accomplishment of that way in and of itself as well. Bucket list item number 5, I think we're on, is to be that person who reaches for nonfiction. Now, there's nothing wrong with loving fiction more than anything else. I do already, and I feel no shame in it. But I want to be that person who has no problem reaching for nonfiction, who likes reading nonfiction, and who likes learning more about the world around them. I just want to be that person who reaches for books outside of my current comfort zone, okay? So that's so much to ask. I want to be very well-rounded in my reading as I grow older. I don't want to just stick with the same thing over and over because I'm never going to learn outside of that. I just want to, at some point, expand my horizons. The next 2 bucket list items are very specific to author and series, but I'm going to put them on here. The first one is to read Brandon Sanderson. That's literally on my bucket list right now because I've had his series on my shelves for years and have yet to read them. He's a beloved fantasy author, he has so many books out, and I just want to read something, if not everything, by him, because I know as soon as I start reading it, I'm going to love it and I'm gonna want to read all of the other ones. That's that. End of bucket list item number 6. 6? Is that what we're on? Bucket list item number 7 is to read all of the Chronicles of Narnia. I've watched the movies, I've read the first book years ago, I said I was going to read them this past Christmas and that never happened, so at some point in my life I am going to read all of the Chronicles of Narnia. That's it. No explanation needed, that's what I'm gonna do. And finally, my last bucket list item number 8, took me a second to try to figure out how to make my fingers say 8, is to publish my own book. I feel like for writers everywhere, this is definitely top on their bucket list if they haven't published anything already. My dream job ever since I was a junior in high school was to become a novelist and to write and publish books. And that is still my dream today. I've been talking a little bit more about my writing on my social media. I put tidbits here and there on my Instagram, not of my writing, but just updates as to how it's going. I'm not going to get into too much detail with it because I find that when I tend to talk about it, I tend to hype it up so much that when I do end up writing it, it just doesn't live up to that expectation I set for it, and I get unmotivated and I stop writing. I'm going to wait until I get a good amount into it or until I completely finish it to share anything with you guys, but just know for now that I'm working on something, I'm passionate about it, and I hope that one day you all will be able to read it too. So those are the 8 items that are currently on my bookish bucket list. I'm sure as I grow older and I'm sure as I knock things off of this list that I will add more to it or take some things away when I decide that they're not just something that I want to do anymore. Please let me know down below if you guys have any items on your bucket list that you would love to cross off, if there's anything at the top of your bucket list that you really would love to do before you die, or anything that you plan to get done this year that you've been wanting to get done for a while now. Let me know down below what your bucket list looks like. Thank you once again to Disney Book Group for sponsoring this video. You can go ahead and pick up The Last Life of Prince Alistair. It is in stores now, and I will have links in the description below if you would like to get your hands on it or read more about it. So I think that's going to be it for this video, everyone. Thank you so much for watching, and I will catch you later. Goodbye!